I would hate to think it's just weird that it's here. What a strange thing to say, right? Well, that's what Matthew Moore told police on the very day his wife Emily disappeared. And that one single sentence, it would end up hanging over this entire bizarre and tragic investigation.
Today, we're diving deep into the truly perplexing case of Emily Noble. This is one of those stories that just sticks with you. It's full of strange predictions, suspicion that just keeps building, and then a final verdict that seems to fly in the face of all the evidence.
So, here's the core puzzle we're looking at. You have a husband who seems to predict almost perfectly how his wife will be found dead. The police, they are absolutely certain he's the murderer. But then a jury sets him free. So how on earth did that happen? Let's get into it.
All right, here's how we're going to break this down. We'll start at the beginning of this unsolvable puzzle, then look at the first red flags that popped up. From there, we'll get into this web of words he spun, the chilling prediction he made, how it all played out in court, and finally, that shocking final verdict.
So our story kicks off on a Monday afternoon in Westerville, Ohio. A guy named Matthew Moore calls 911 to report his wife, 52-year-old Emily Noble, missing. Now, for the police dispatcher on the other end, this call must have sent a shiver down their spine. Because believe it or not, Matthew had made an almost identical call just 1 year before for his son, who was later found dead.
Okay, so from the second the police show up at his door, Matthew Moore's behavior starts to strike them as, well, just plain odd. Right off the bat, investigators are picking up on little things that just don't feel right.
And here's the first huge red flag. Matthew just hadn't done anything. He tells the officer, oh yeah, Emily often goes foraging on this bike path, which is, by the way, just a 15-minute walk from their house. But here's the thing. 7 hours have passed since he last saw her, and he hasn't even bothered to go look for her himself. Strange, right?
And the idea that she just decided to leave on her own, that starts to look pretty unlikely fast. Why? Because all of her crucial stuff was still at home. Her wallet, her ID, her phone, even her car was still sitting in the garage. It was almost like, and this is a quote from Matthew himself, she had simply vanished.
Now get this. Emily has been missing for less than a day, and Matthew makes this really startling comparison. He tells the officer he has the exact same gut feeling that he had when his son, Joey, died just a year earlier. For the investigators, this was a massive leap. I mean, to jump to that dark of a conclusion so quickly, it felt premature.
And then comes this really, really weird moment. A neighbor says they saw Emily in the garage that morning, so Matthew takes the officer out there. But instead of, being focused on finding his wife, he points to a power cable on the floor and says it doesn't belong here. He just keeps calling it weird. At the time, it seems totally random, but he was planting a little seed of information that would become absolutely haunting down the line.
All right, so fast forward 2 days. Still no sign of Emily. The police asked Matthew to come down to the station for a voluntary interview. They're probably hoping to clear some things up, right? But what happens is the complete opposite. His own words just end up tangling him even deeper into this web of suspicion.
And the inconsistencies just start piling up. It's almost comical. For instance, they ask him, does she ever go out at night by herself? His first answer? No. But then, just moments later, he says, no, but she does. I mean, what? It's a blatant contradiction, and you can bet the detectives circled that one in red ink.
And the alarm bells just keep on ringing. Out of nowhere, he blurts out, I didn't do it, even though nobody had accused him of anything. He was just there as a worried husband, supposedly. He also kept talking about Emily in the past tense, using words like she loved to do things, as if he already knew she was gone. Then he starts suggesting she might have hurt herself, something her friends and family said was absolutely not in her character. And to top it all off, completely unprompted, he offers to take a polygraph.
So the police were like, okay, sure. They decide to use something called a CVSA test. It's a little different from your classic polygraph. Instead of hooking you up to machines, it analyzes your voice. It's looking for these microscopic tremors, these little vibrations you can't control that can show up when you're stressed or lying.
And wouldn't you know it, the test that Matthew so eagerly volunteered for, it did not clear his name. Not even close. In fact, it did the exact opposite. They ask him the big question, point blank, do you know where Emily is? And when he says no, the CVSA flags it as deceptive. Now, you can't use this stuff in court, but for the investigators, this was a huge deal.
So 4 long months go by. The search for Emily has gone completely cold. And then, everything changes. A group of women are out for a walk in a park right near the couple's house, and they stumble upon a grim discovery that just blows the case wide open.
When the police get there, they find a body that's obviously been out in the elements for a long time. It's confirmed to be Emily, and the scene is strange. She's in a wooded area, there's a USB computer cord at the scene, and her wedding and engagement rings are laid out neatly right next to her. It was clearly staged, but what was it staged to look like?
And this right here is where the case goes from suspicious to downright chilling. Think about it. The location, it's close to their home. The cause of death seems to be self-inflicted, and the most disturbing part of all, the weapon is a cord, just like that misplaced power cable Matthew made such a big deal about on day one. It was as if he had literally written the script for how his wife would be found. At that point, police had seen enough. He was immediately arrested and charged with her murder.
Okay, so the case heads to trial. The prosecution feels pretty confident, right? They lay out all of Matthew's strange behavior, his suspicious statements, and of course, those predictions that seem so damning. But the defense came back with a very simple but very powerful question. Where's the hard proof?
And really, the entire trial boiled down to this one slide. The prosecution's case was what they call circumstantial. That just means there was no smoking gun, no eyewitnesses saw a crime, there was no DNA linking Matthew to the scene, no confession. All they had was this long chain of suspicious behavior and weird statements that, when you put them all together, really looked bad. But the defense's job isn't to prove he's innocent. Their only job is to create reasonable doubt. So they went after every single point. They argued the fractures on her neck could have been self-inflicted. And their ace in the hole, they pointed to the family's tragic history of self-inflicted deaths. They argued this wasn't a murder. It was just another chapter in a very sad story.
So after all the arguments, all the evidence, the case is finally handed over to the jury. Now, in a big murder trial like this, you'd expect them to be out for days, right? Debating, arguing. But not this time. The jury came back with a decision in less than 3 hours.
Not guilty on all counts. Matthew Moore just broke down crying as the verdict was read. He was a free man. That mountain of circumstantial evidence the prosecution had built, it just wasn't enough. The defense successfully created that reasonable doubt.
And that just leaves us with this huge, haunting question, doesn't it? When all you have is circumstantial evidence, how does a jury ever really know if they're looking at a series of tragic coincidences or a perfectly staged crime? Was Matthew Moore just a grieving, maybe awkward husband who got caught up in a terrible situation? Or was he a brilliant killer who used his family's tragic past as the perfect cover to get away with murder? The court gave its answer, but for a lot of people, the mystery is far from solved.